What gifts have been brought to me? Once again, this vampiric relic is in the proper hands of LordeStarfox and, of course, the Midnight Society. Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Still warm, just the way I like it. My creatures of the night, who dares awaken me from my slumber? Dr. Dennis Carroll, a member of the good old Midnight Society science team, is already sitting around the late night fire waiting for us. Are you ready to take a walk into the madness tonight?
Absolutely, sir. We're going to walk deep into the darkness tonight. Yes, sir.
Excellent. Yes, to the audience, as always, it is time to nerd out with the good old science team here and stuff that file cabinet upstairs full of excellent knowledge. Dr. Carroll, center stage is yours, and I am going to throw you the microphone so that you can spoil the audience and myself once again.
Alrighty. We're going to pull a file tonight on one of the, I would call it one of the strangest and yet most supernatural cryptid I know of in the cryptid world itself. For many years, I have studied in cryptids all over the world, and every different culture has their different cryptids. It's fascinating. It's a subject that is a very large and extensive field of research. And I have delved deep into it for going on almost 60 years now. And this is one I picked up, tonight. I thought we would, discuss a little bit about, because it is one of the most, I think interesting and very unusual cryptids that are out there. And this comes from mainly the Dominican Republic. And although it does have a distinct tie, which we'll discuss later, with France. But we're talking tonight about I hope very well known by most of the people out there, the Galipote. The Galipote is a very strange and spiritual type cryptid that is the belief systems that surround it. That's why I call it a supernatural cryptid. It can be a shapeshifter. It can do anything. It can shapeshift into animals. It can shapeshift into people, and even inanimate objects, such as a rock or a tree or a bridge, whatever it wants to supposedly appear to be. This thing has some very extensive, supposedly supernatural powers. And it is very spiritual. And like I said, it can even go to the point of possessing people. Now, you might remember a few shows back we talked about the shadow walkers, the witches that even skinwalkers are afraid of, because they have the ability to project themselves into people's dreams, into the bodies of other animals. They can possess those animals, and even probably sometimes possess certain people that they need to possess. They can turn these people into zombies, and this is supposedly what the Galipote can do. It can project itself In other words, possess someone. It is called a lugaroo, which sounds very much like rougarou. The Galipote is very interesting in the fact that it is not only spiritual, but it can take on physical attributes. You could walk by this guy and it would look like a tree to you, or maybe like an old tree stump or something. And by the time you get by, or it comes behind your back as something else. So you never know. This is the one thing that makes the Galipote so dangerous. He can appear as anything at any time. So you would be caught basically unawares. You how can you defend yourself against something that can do that? That's very would be very incredibly hard to do. And there are ways supposedly to ward off the Galipote. There are like even using the old method of salt against it, using bamboo wands against it. Now, bamboo wands are wands made in a lot of the like in the Dominican Republic and places like that as protective implements. These are basically you split bamboo like poles and notch them in a certain way. It's like a ritualistic stick that they use, and you can lay it across doorways or in windows or prop open windows, whatever the situation is. It's supposed to be highly protective, and this is one of the things supposedly that will keep the Galipote away from your house. But here's the interesting thing: it says that the Galipote, being spiritual, can actually travel on the wind. So on windy nights, people in the Dominican Republic do not like to keep their windows open because it's an open invitation to the Galipote. And here's another interesting aspect of the Galipote. And like I say, this guy is incredibly vast, okay, in the many areas that it accomplish what it wants to do. The Galipote is supposed to be able to suck the blood out of. That's why they're very careful about guarding their doors and windows, especially at night. This thing will suck the blood out of and gain immortality that way. It gives it sort of like its own kind of fountain of youth kind of thing going on. So that is another freaky attribute about that. And here's something else that I find very disturbing about the Galipote is that it can supposedly move out, and I mean move out of time and space. It almost like can move what I like to call statically. In other words, you can see it in one area and before you can move your eyes, even it's in another place. So it's statically moving through time and space at the speed of light almost. That's another attribute. So that's why I say this thing is a supernatural creature. Also, the Galipote is supposed to be, it haunts graveyards, it haunts dark areas, alleyways, wherever it's dark, damp, and just filthy and foul like places, that's where it hangs out. And that's sort of its base of operations. But it can appear anywhere. It can be in the woods, it can be in the jungles, it can be wherever it wants to be. But that's its main hangout in those dark areas like that. So that's an interesting aspect too. Now I mentioned earlier that it is connected to to the France. Actually, there is a being in France very much like the Galipote. We'll have to talk about it sometime. But there is a definite connection. And here's another aspect of the Galipote. It also one of its favorite animals to transform into is a wolf. So what you're looking at is sort of a werewolf to a certain extent. But like I said, it can appear as anything. It can appear as a horse, a cow. It could be a dog or a cat. It could be a railing on a fence if it wanted to, a rock on the ground. This is what it can do. This thing has immense, supposedly supernatural power, and it also supposedly, like I said earlier, can possess people. I want to talk about that a little bit. Uh, Down through time, there have been many, down through centuries, many people who study the spiritual aspect and supernatural aspect of some of these people and beings that have these powers. And one of the most sought after powers is being able to possess things. And most of the time, though, and here's the interesting thing about the Galipote, most of the time, things that can do that do not usually turn into inanimate objects. That's very unusual. I've talked about this before, being a demonologist. I know this for a fact that demons cannot actually And this is a demonic evil spirit that we're talking about, the Galipote. That's definitely what it is. They cannot actually supposedly possess inanimate objects because possession means you have to have a spirit of some kind. That spirit must be possessed. But there is a line drawn between this that we got to understand that even though you may not be possessing an actual spirit, you are, if you take over the body of something or the substance of something, you are not just possessing it, you are actually inhabiting that thing. Very much like what, a lot of people talk about with the Dybbuk box. The Dybbuk box is nothing but a wooden box or cabinet. It could even be a bottle or jar or anything like that that you can contain a spirit in. And there are certain rituals, magic things, formulas, and stuff that you do to contain that spirit inside of a container. And that is very much like the genie of old. Remember the stories of genies? You rub the bottle and the genie comes out. Well, that's what that is. That's a Dybbuk box. It's got a spirit in it. Matter of fact, the very famous, well-known Edgar Allan Poe wrote a story about that, but it was called The Imp in the Bottle. And the imp, of course, is sort of a lower caste demon. They're sort of the scum of the demon world. Okay, they're the trash of the demon world. That's an interesting aspect of this. You can actually contain a spirit in something, whether it be a genie bottle or a box like the Divi box or whatever the situation. That means also you could probably do that with a living being. Definitely, if you have the ability and powers to do that, you would be possess this. And I've often wondered about this aspect of the Galipote that supposedly that it can actually possess living people, turn them into something very much like a zombie. They can overwhelm this person, take over that person, motivate them to do things. Let's say that you were to do some type of a ritual to call up the Galipote and get it to possess your enemy. This would be a interesting way to get rid of your enemy. You sort of laid a trap for him. And this has been talked about being done by certain people in the Dominican Republic. So that's a very interesting aspect of the Galipote. And a lot of these so called witch doctors can supposedly do this. They can tap into the spirit of the Galipote and do these things. So, it's not that far fetched to think about that. The ramifications of this are very far reaching and very broad when you think about it. It's downright scary. If this thing does exist, and there is supposed to be a lot of, evidence that they do, but it's in a very shady area of the supernatural. And that's the interesting thing about the supernatural. It can be very sneaky and very secretive in the way it does things from the shadows and the darkness. It's usually smart enough never to give away its, hand and it's never show its hand. It's very sneaky that way. I've actually run into the demonic spirits that are like that. They you can tell them to do something and they won't because they don't want to, overextend themselves. But yet they will do something when you least expect it. And that's what the Galipote supposedly does. It can shadow you, it can haunt you like a ghost almost. No matter where you go, there it is. And it can take, like I said, on the form of a shadow. It can take a form of a cat if it wanted to. It can do any of these things and keep haunting you, following you around. And that is another name for the Galipote. It is he who follows. If it attaches to you, and this is very much like a demonical attachment thing, it can drive you insane. That's an interesting aspect of the Galipote. So when it comes to cryptids, my friend, when you look at the Galipote, he is definitely some guy you would not want to trifle with. You would not really want to mess with this cryptid at all. Matter of fact, you would want to avoid him at all costs because he is so extensive in his dark powers and the things that he can do. Which is why I said at the beginning, he's supernatural. And that's scary to think about, and especially something that can move through time and space. They can be like 20 yards away from you, and you turn around and he's right standing behind you. I mean, that's kind of frightening to think about. Definitely. How would you guard yourself against something like that? How could you prepare to defend yourself against that. That would be incredibly hard to do. So if the Galipote comes after you, you're pretty much, according to the people in the Dominican Republic, he's going to get you sooner or later, one way or another. He's going to get to you. So that is interesting. But, and like I say, they put a lot of emphasis on trying to protect themselves from this entity. Like I say, they have other things too. And there's just also, I found this very interesting, that some of them rely upon the very old and very old fashioned rabbit's foot. They think that is very protective, believe it or not. We here in the Western world look upon it as sort of a more lucky kind of a piece, something that enables us to have luck. They look upon the rabbit's foot as more like something that is very protective, sort of like you would think about maybe a cross in a vampire movie, or a silver bullet against a werewolf. So they look upon the rabbit's foot that way. That's interesting too. Very speculative by the way that they look at these things. They're very superstitious in that way. And I have found out through the years in my studies and deep investigative research, definitely it goes very deep, that a lot of this stuff has a strong, almost an iron tie to superstition in the areas that these where these things take place. So superstition and the supernatural go hand in hand. They go together, and a lot of superstitions are either to avoid these things happening or to either protect you against these things. That's I found to be very interesting. Another aspect of the Galipote, they say they will keep it away from you. Of course, our blessed items, like crosses or medallions or St. Christopher medals or whatever, those are supposed to be very good against the Galipote as well. But another thing I thought that was very interesting is that you can carry certain items that will keep it away from you. I think one of the items mentioned was believe it or not, was like a fish hook. And I found that very interesting because most fish hooks are made out of iron, or an iron composite like steel or something like that. So that is another aspect of iron. And, iron is found out worldwide to be supposedly, a very protective thing against evil. Main thing I'm going to say about the Galipote, he is a premier evil spirit. That's why he's able to do all these different things, supposedly. And that's why he is feared so greatly, especially by the people of the Dominican Republic and areas like that. They believe very much, there's a lot of Catholic influence there. And they believe very much in the existence of spirits and evil spirits, especially. And of course, that is what the demonic is. But it's very seldom that you will find one with such extensive power as the Galipote. It's very interesting, and that's what interested me in the research on this cryptid. And it's not a well known cryptid, except well known by cryptozoologists. They know about it more than the common person would know, except the people who live in these areas. They know more about it. And there were some things that you never want to do to attract the attention of the Galipote, or to have someone, and they are directly connected to black witchcraft. Okay, the Galipote. You don't ever want to get one of those witches down there mad at you, supposedly, or they might sick a Galipote on you. So that's an interesting aspect of that as well. So you would have to be very careful how you do it, but you don't want to hang out definitely in graveyards, on bridges, mountain passes, places like that, dark areas of the jungle, and places that are, like I said earlier, the dark, damp, evil, foul places where, maybe even like trash piles and stuff like that. You don't want to hang around that, because that's supposedly prime territory for the Galipote. So that's the number one way to supposedly protect yourself against the Galipote, is to have a pure heart. Try to be a good person, or as a lot of them look upon themselves as Christian people. They try to have a pure heart. That supposedly protects you. The main number one thing that protects you against the Galipote. Um, it is the Galipote is attracted, like all evil. It is attracted by evil, by darkness. Darkness is attracted by darkness. So the more evil kind of a person you are, the kind of evil lifestyle that you live, the negative things that you do can get the attention of the Galipote. So a lot of mothers and grandmothers over the years have warned their children, be good, or the Galipote may get you. I think it's mostly like I say, and there are some jungle areas definitely in there. You're very close to the equator in some of those areas, and I find that a lot of this stuff, I believe, anthropology speaking wise, and in an anthropological sort of way, a lot of these things are related to the superstition of these people, and especially the jungle tribes and stuff, and the witch doctors that exist in those places, and the witchcraft that supposedly goes on. They have a very big fear of witchcraft in these areas, and it's also, though, I think also they have a sort of healthy respect for it. In other words, they like to avoid it rather than confront it, if possible. And that makes sense when you think about it. It's like that old saying: "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure," or something like that. And that's the way they kind of look at it. If you can avoid it, stay away from it, then you're better off that way. But that's the way they look at any type of witchcraft, not just about the one concerning the Galipote, but other types of witchcraft, voodoo, and stuff like that. Um, and a lot of them, by the way, not only are believers, but they are, partakers of it as well. A lot of that, some of that is their religion is tied deep into their own personal beliefs system. So that's fascinating too. So, as sort of an amateur anthropologist myself, this is fascinating stuff because it goes to culture, folklore, superstition, supernatural, legend. All of this is tied in together in this one specific area, you know. And like I said, there is sort of a connection to this thing because this one's very similar to it in France. And it has that kind of, and what interested me to begin with this with the subject of the Galipote was it was sort of like a potential werewolf vampire hybrid thing, and that was very strange too in that respect. But the underlying cause behind all of that is this is a definite premier expert at shapeshifting, and shapeshifting is part of supernatural belief worldwide in many different cultures. Well, tomorrow night, Wednesday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be doing another episode of Hunting the Shadows, and we're going to be talking about the ancient bloodline thing again on that show. And then Friday nights, we'll be doing Paranormal Point of View. Actually, we're going to have a very interesting show Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Hunting the Shadows YouTube podcast channel. We're going to be covering some survival tactics. And we're going to be looking at some stuff that you may need to know, especially basically some very important stuff that you need to learn on personal survival because a lot of people throughout the world feel that there are some very rough and hard times coming ahead of us. So the more that we can learn and assimilate on survival techniques and things that connected to it, the more I think we will be able to handle certain situations that may be waiting for us in the future, definitely. So we're going to be looking at that Friday night and talking about bug out bags and bug in bags. There's two kind of different things you're looking at: bug out and bug in bags, and different things like that, and how to barricade your home in the event of a zombie apocalypse. We're going to be talking about a lot of that, so it should be an interesting show. And that's Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also, I have some books available on Barnes and Noble. Just look up the author, Dennis W. Carroll. And if you need to contact me, you want to share a story, you want to tell me something, I have people send me pictures and tell me stories a lot. You can contact me at denniswcarroll.com, which is my website, or at denniswcarroll@gmail.com if you want to send me an email. So you can do that. And also, I have a paranormal consultation service. If you have any kind of a paranormal problem, or just like I said there again, if you want to share a story or just ask some questions or whatever, I'm available for that as well through my website. So you can reach me that way as well. And I also am working on one more book that I hope to have out very soon in the future here. It's called Paracryptidology, Hunting Monsters and Things of Nightmare. And the Galipote is mentioned in that book, by the way.
Let's go. Legendary stuff. And yes, to the audience, I do know that no one enjoys ads. Yet we, as content creators, big or small, strategically put those there to help our channels grow in the good old algorithm. Also, if you enjoy the video, please like, comment, subscribe if you have not yet, and share around this great information so that YouTube and the algorithm understands we are just as cool as everybody else and deserve a spot at the good old table. Make sure to head over to Dennis's page. As he had mentioned, do the same. Hit the like button, subscribe, share it around. And if you ever do see a content creator you enjoy has a merch store and you get adventurous, check it out. That is one of the best possible ways to help your favorite content creators grow their brand. Also, check out the playlist down below. That is where you will find Dr. Dennis Carroll, or check out the page suggestions called The Good Old Midnight Society. Dennis, thanks for hanging out tonight, man. I appreciate you.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.
The fear in your eyes, exquisite. What gifts have been brought to me? Once again, this vampiric relic is in the proper hands of LordeStarfox and, of course, the Midnight Society.